Hello my beautiful wild creative women. Today for our creative challenge this month we are going to do neurographic art. This is something that I've discovered recently and I think it's really wonderful. So it is a therapeutic art form and it has been scientifically validated and proven as one of the most widely used psychological techniques in art therapy. It's also known as doodling. We're good at that, aren't we? But it's brilliant because you can do these free form lines, and if you can see, I've just done all these squiggles on the page, and then I am getting a black pen, a Posca, to colour in the lines where they join up. So where any lines cross over, you colour in those little bits. Now with Poscas you have to shake them to wake them. I remember when I got my first ever Posca pen and I didn't know that you had to shake it, and I took it back to the shop. I went, it doesn't work, there's no ink in it. And she was like, yeah, you have to shake it and press it down. So I know that now. So here's me, and I am just going over every little bit there where it joins and just colouring it in the black. And then I decided, so you can colour it in any way you want, but I decided for this one that I didn't want any of the colours the same to be touching, and you'll see later on in the video where I come a cropper with that idea. But the idea behind this is to attach your consciousness and your unconsciousness, and it's like a meditative practice, so you just lose yourself in the doodling and the drawing. It's also really good as well if you've got chronic pain, anxiety, you're feeling stressed, because you just lose yourself in what you're doing, and that helps you to get clarity and peacefulness. And we could all do some more of that, couldn't we? And it's like doodling, where have you ever been on a phone call and you've just been doodling on a notepad mindlessly, and then you kind of go, oh, I'm on the phone, and you remember that you're still on the phone. It's like that kind of thing. So after doing all the freeform lines, and they can look in any shape or form that you want them to, I decided to add some circles over the top to give myself some extra crossover lines. You can also do this if you want. You can totally copy mine, or you can just do whichever one springs to mind yourself. It's no right or wrong with this. It's just all about the actual mindful calmness about giving yourself a little bit of time to have some time for you and do a bit of creativity. Even if you think you're not creative, anybody could do this, and just lose yourself like you did when you was a kid and you just used to draw and colour in. So my circles went a bit skew with, and I have to now colour in the corner bits again to make them join in like I did with the other ones. So because my circles went a bit skew with, I added a bit of extra black pen over the top, and that's totally fine. So I have missed some little bits, which you will see later on in the video, that I remember. So that's also quite interesting as well, because my mind was actually wandering at this point. It was wandering on what I was going to eat for tea, and I have actually missed little bits out. So it is like meditation, where you've got to keep bringing it back to the breath, but this is, you've got to keep bringing it back to the drawing. And now decided to use my paint tin. I'm going to draw around that. It was an old sweet tin, it's got paints in it. I'm going to draw around that to make an even bigger circle. You could carry on, you could just keep doing loads and loads and loads. The more lines that you put on there and the more crossover parts, obviously the more complicated it's going to be and the longer it will take you. So now I've got to colour those bits in. And also, if you have only got a small amount of time, like if you've got little children or you've got to go out somewhere or something, you can always come back to it. You don't have to do it all in one go. I'm a little bit like the kind of person that wants to do it all in one go and get it not over and done with, but like I want to finish it. I really like the finish bit of it. But you can keep coming back to it over and over again. And actually watching this video back while I was recording this audio, I've realised that I am going to go back to it and I'm going to darken some of the colours where they meet at the crossover bits. So that's what I'm going to do. So I am going to go back to it, and you can do that for your drawing as well. You might not be satisfied with it when you've finished it, and that's totally okay. It's not about perfection, it's about the doing. Neurographic art allows for vast creative freedom, which is what's really good about it, for if you think that you don't have any creativity, even though everybody does. Here I've picked a pink pen. Pink is my favourite colour. I love it. I really love it. It frees you from the inhibition of it being perfect. You don't have to make it perfect, and it can have a positive impact on you, where you can make a piece of work and then at the end of it you'd be like, oh my god, I love it, it's really nice, I've made that. So it's really good for your self-esteem as well. And also when you're drawing, when you get really into it and you're not listening to me waffling on, just like with meditation, you can transform and process any emotions that you might have had in there stuck, and they might come out. So don't be surprised if one day you do this after doing it for a while and you're like really getting into it, and then you might burst into tears, or you might feel something, because I think in the modern world that we're in, we don't allow ourselves time to stop and think, unless it is to go to sleep or to meditate, and even that's difficult because your mind is trying to switch off, but then it fills up with so much stuff. So it's really good for that. And I'm using felt tips on this one. They are meant to be watercolour felt tips, but they're actually not. I got them from B&M Bargains, and they do colour in really well. They've got a fat end, which is like a brush bit, and they've got a thin end as well, like a felt tip end. And they've lasted ages. They are worth it. They are worth getting, but they're not good for watercolour. So yeah, don't get them if you think that you're gonna colour them with water, because they don't work. So the other thing to think about is, when you're drawing like this, let your hand flow freely when it's making the initial marks on the page. Don't overthink it. As soon as you overthink it, then you need to stop a second and start again, or go off the page with your line and come back to it. You can also focus on a feeling. If you have got a specific feeling that you want to tune into and you want that to come out on your page, you can also do that as well, which is quite nice. It's a really good thing to process. It's a type of journaling in a way, but through art and lines and colours. So I never pick fluorescent colours. I don't really like fluorescent colours, apart from the fluorescent pink paint that I've got. But I actually really enjoyed using this fluorescent green in this piece. just to let you know, the music that I'm listening to in this video, if you can hear it in the background, is a Studio Ghibli playlist, and it's on Apple Music. That's where I found it, and it's all the different Studio Ghibli films. Some of them are a bit weird and a bit upbeat, but some of them are alright. And I also really love the Arrietty playlist on Apple Music as well. Arrietty is another Studio Ghibli film. So I always recommend that whenever you're doing any creative work, pop some music on in the background because it helps you to get in the flow. I decided to swap from felt tips to paint now, so this is a watercolour palette that my bestie handmade Dorset made me for my birthday, and it smells of cloves and it's metallic. And the reason I've swapped to paint is because it's bigger areas to colour in, and I thought it would be easier. But actually, what I found was that it was annoying me a little bit because of the brush marks. And now I could have used a bigger brush. That is always the option to do, so you wouldn't have had all them little brush marks in it. But I didn't have a bigger brush to hand, and the one that I'd normally use, I used earlier painting a glass lantern, and I didn't realise that the glass paint, was an oil-based one. So I ruined my paintbrush basically, because I don't have anything to clean it with. So that's why I'm using this tiny little brush, and that's okay as well. But yeah, I think in future I would have used a bigger brush to colour in. And I did think halfway through, go and get a bigger brush. And I was like, no, this is mindful, using a small brush. And this is a Winsor & Newton pink professional watercolour pan that's in here. The reason they're in this tin is because I've run out of room in my other watercolour box. And if you are new to watercolours and you are looking for some, I highly recommend the Winsor & Newton ones, and you want to get the professional ones. So they're actually called that, Winsor & Newton Professional Watercolours. They do have other watercolours, but they're not called professional. And the difference between the two is the ones that are the professional brand ones, they have got a much deeper pigment, so the colours come out so much deeper. You can really tell, you know, when you use the different types. You'll see later on in the video when I use the orange, that's the professional one, and the colour is just really deep and lovely. The other great thing about these watercolours is that you can buy them individually. So I would say if you've never done it before, it's really great to buy a little palette with a few different colours in. But if you don't want to spend the money, you can buy each one individually. So just pick like 2 or 3 of your favourite colour to have a go with and have a play with. So this is the orange that I was talking about. Wait till you see how deep this colour is. You can't actually see how deep the colour is until I paint a bit more. But if you contrast it to the pink, you'll be able to see what I mean when I say it's a deep colour. It's a more vibrant colour. Deep's the wrong word. It's a more vibrant colour. There you go. That's when it really kicks in. Check that colour out. Isn't it lovely? It's really lovely. What's also crackers and great about this artwork is that it actually represents like your neurons in your brain when you're finished, and the way that they're all linked together. Neurographic art is actually pretty new. It was only developed in 2014. So as far as art techniques go, that's a really new kind of practice. And it was discovered by a Russian psychologist. And it invites you to draw the freeform lines, as I was saying, and these is it a he? Is it did it? I can't remember if it was a he. I think it was. He calls them neurolines, so that's where the neurographic art comes from. Sorry about all my sniffing and sneezing during this video. Just been in the garden before I did this, and I think the pollen count is quite high today and my nose keeps itching, and at one point I do sneeze and I think I knocked the camera. Very professional, so professional. But yeah, so apologise for that, especially if it's something that really annoys you. Just turn the sound off. But basically I'm now colouring in all the different areas, and so none of the colours touch. You don't have to do this, like I say, this is just something that I wanted to do just to give my mind a bit of a mental workout while I was being mindful. Does that even work? I don't know. But that's what I was doing. I quite like puzzles and challenges and stuff. So grab your supplies, grab what you need, and just have a go and have fun with it. And if you want to fast forward this video to the end or towards the end, you can see that I add patterns and things like that. Or if you want to leave it there and just fast forward to the end to see the end result, feel free to do that as well. I've just noticed there that I've missed some lines. So this is the other thing. I think because I was concentrating on making this video for all you beautiful ladies, it's because, not because, I'm getting my words mixed up now, because let me start again, because I was focusing on making this video for you beautiful ladies, I kind of forgot the mindfulness part. But when I do it on my own, just for my own thing, it is very mindful. So you see I've missed these parts out, so I'm just going to go back over now with my Posca pen to colour them in. And I'm adding this blue around the outside, and I'm using the watercolour, again, Winsor & Newton, and I really like this one. I really love this deep colour. So I'm going to add that on the outside of the painting. Picture, painting, drawing, artwork, whatever you want to call it, I'm adding the blue. at this point I've actually realised that if I carry on with the blue, it's going to touch the other blue in the circle, and I didn't want it touching. So I've decided to be a bit naughty and cheat a little bit and stop the blue at this point and make a separate line so it goes upwards. There's the blue in the circle and I don't want it to touch the other blue. So if I just add another line to it here, then I can just separate it off. And yeah, it was a little bit naughty that, because there wasn't actually a neuro line there, but never mind, don't tell anyone. It was that OCD thing of, do I just leave it, or no, I can't, because I can't have the colours touching. That's what I set out to do. So to get away with it, I've decided to do an extra neuro line all the way along and attach it. And now I need to remember to colour in the corner bits again, because this is where it's been crossing over. So I make sure that I colour in all those corner bits and remember that part of it. Now I can carry on, as you can see, with the blue around the edge, and I carry on that all the way around. But at the same time, I'm also thinking about, is it going to come and touch another colour? So really I was quite in my head, I've got to be truthful, I was quite in my head, I wasn't in the free flow state that it should be. So if you try this and you're in your head, don't worry about it. Just like during meditation, when you have a thought come in, you can just imagine it on a cloud floating back out again. This is the same with this. So if you're doing this and then suddenly you start thinking, what am I going to cook for tea? How long have I got left? I've got to go to the dentist next week. Don't forget to do that thing. Blah, 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 blah. All the stuff that your brain starts waffling on about. Just be like, no brain. I'm sending in a cloud to clear my mind. Whoosh, all the thoughts gone, and I'm back to doing my drawing. So even though this bit at the bottom is quite big, I've decided to go back to a felt pen because I've run out of a dark purple paint and I wanted it purple. I'm not sure why I wanted it purple, it just called to me, colour it in purple. So this is why I've gone back to the pen. And actually I like using the pen a lot more for this kind of work, so I think that that's what I'm going to do for future. Little bit of interesting information for you here. The Russian person that the Russian doctor that created this art therapy has actually copyrighted it, so you're not actually allowed to teach it unless you get a certification from them, which is interesting, isn't it? So there's a lot more to it than what I've just been talking about and showing you today. There's a lot of more deep work, more deep art therapy that goes with it. But between you, me and a gatepost, where does that saying come from? You, me and the gatepost? I don't really know. I'm going to find out. oh. So on this bit, you see, I'm like, oh, I've got the purple. Can I add the blue? Check in. Yes, I can add the blue because it's not going to touch anything. That's totally fine. The little bit of pink and blue in the middle threw me a little bit. So yeah, so between you, me and the gatepost, if you know where that saying coming from, please let me know. I am not teaching you how to do the neurotherapy. I am just sharing what I've been learning. Neurographic art, in fact. I'm not sharing the neurographic art or telling you how to do it. I'm just sharing what I've been doing with you. There's loads of videos on YouTube. If you really like this and you want to get into it further and go down that whole rabbit hole of that, there's tons of videos on YouTube and it's really cool. And I often just pop them on in the background while I'm doing my own drawing. So now it's all coloured in, I'm going to go back and go over everything with a pen. I'm going to use a thicker poster this time. Give it a good old shake to get the ink flowing. And I think this one is, yeah, it's run out. I don't know why I don't just put it in the bin. I guarantee at the end of clearing up I'll just put it back in the pot. I don't know why I do this. So I've got a different Posca here. So I'm going to go over all of the lines and make them darker again. And really I should be concentrating and doing it really neatly. But if you can see on the left hand side of the screen, that is my head. And I didn't realise that my head was in the shot of the video. So I'm sorry about that, but this is why it's a little bit messy, because I was like, at some point I realised I'm under the camera here with my head that looks like a giant head on this video, and it's not meant to be. Anyway, so if I was doing it without videoing, I would do it much slower and much neater, and I might make the lines a little bit thicker as well. So please forgive me when I make a few errors as I'm drawing, because I'm trying to concentrate on too many things at once. And you know how difficult that can be. So you can see where I've gone thicker over some of the lines, and I actually quite like that. I like that it's thicker and darker. I think it actually makes it stand out and pop a little bit more. So feel free to do whatever you want, however you want. If you want to have thicker lines, go for it. If you want to have thin lines, leave them thin. It's entirely up to you. This is just your piece to play around with. Now I think it's a good idea to add a little bit of pattern, so I'm going to add some stripes to the fluorescent green, and again you can do this as slow or as fast as you want. You could add dots, you could add stars, triangles, squares, whatever you wanted. You don't have to add a pattern. If you don't want to add a pattern, that's totally fine too. Again, it's just up to you. But I thought, what's missing? Something's missing on this piece, and I think it was the lines. So I'm going to add the lines to the green and dots to the orange and dots to the pink, and then I think it's about finished. That's what I think while I was doing it. But as I was saying at the beginning of the video, actually now on reflection, looking back, now everything's dry, I think I'm going to go back in before I go and make dinner and do some of the colours darker at the bits where they meet. So you know the bits where I did the black things where the lines cross over? I think I'm going to do some of the colours a little bit darker to make it stand out a little bit more. And as you can see, now I've put the pattern on, this was the finished piece, and then I decided to work back into it with some watercolour pencil crayons to do the shading.